Mr. Bennett. Mr. Maxwell frowned and interrupted Aaron and Jack's conversation. Am I wrong? Aaron turned and looked at Christian. You have to venture deep inside the tiger's den if you want to destroy it. That's the only way. I led a few operations back when I was in the army. It was a matter of life and death every time, but I've never failed. Christian's brows trembled slightly. Say no more, Mr. Maxwell said, sounding much harsher than before. How can our mister possibly do such a thing? He'll break down. No, he won't, Aaron said, and his expression looked as sharp as a knife. He could stay underground for 10 days and nights without breaking down. This goes to show that he's actually very strong at heart and has a high level of tolerance. Mr. Maxwell sneered coldly. You make it sound so easy, but you're not the one who's going. I would also do this for the sake of my loved ones and for the sake of growing old together with her. Every word that Aaron said was elegant. I don't understand what project of yours the other party is coveting, but it must be important. No matter where you hide, even if you're protected, you can't possibly hide for the rest of your life. You'll have to think of her family members. We've discussed this idea before, Kristen gritted his teeth and said abruptly. But I objected strongly because I felt that it wouldn't work for Mr. Kipling. However, this is certainly the best solution, and Mr. Kipling won't have to break up with Miss Bennett. Mr. Maxwell replied coldly, but it's also possible that he won't ever be able to return. What exactly are you guys talking about? Jack was completely lost. What's the solution that doesn't need me to break up with Sylvia and can allow us to be together until we're old? Mr. Maxwell could not put up with this anymore. He yanked Jack up, intending to leave. Sir, don't listen to them. You should return to the laboratory. No, I want to listen, Jack said obstinately and refused to budge. Aaron rubbed his brows while Christian smiled helplessly. We're saying that you should work undercover. Tox is currently targeting Miss Bennett, but their motives are actually very simple. They want you to hand over what they want. If the thing that they want is your mind, then we can only bring you to them. A genius scientist like you is a prized treasure to people like them. We can't send other spies over as the people in their organization are all skilled in technology. You won't be able to pass any message out unless you're also skilled in technology. Undercover? Jack's lips quivered in fear. I've watched movies about spies with Sylvia before. It looks very, very scary. Aaron was speechless. You heard him, Mr. Maxwell said crossly. Our mister has never even lied before. He's especially timid. It's just a suggestion. I'm not insisting that he should go. He should think this through himself. These are his affairs, and I'm merely an outsider. You guys can mull it over slowly. But the pressing matter on hand is to give Sylvia a call or to clarify things with her in person. Aaron replied with a frown on his face. If you still won't go, she'll think that I'm the one who threatened you to leave. I'll go meet Sylvia. Jack immediately straightened his back. If nobody was going to threaten him to break up with Sylvia, then he would head over to her immediately. Aaron was speechless when he saw how sloppy Jack looked. Please shave your beard and brush your teeth. God knows how many days you've gone without brushing your teeth. It stinks. After Jack huffed out a breath of air and took a sniff, he was also disgusted with himself. It stank so much, and Sylvia definitely would not be pleased. She would always ask him to brush his teeth clean before they kissed. Jack leaned against the window of the car and spaced out while they were on their way to the villa. Meanwhile, Aaron kept answering calls from his home and his office. Finally, when they were not far from the villa, Jack suddenly asked glumly, What if someone steals Sylvia from me while I'm working undercover? Like Jeremy, for instance. He always has his eyes on her. Aaron almost slammed on his car brakes out of shock. He glanced sideways at the man beside him. Jack still looked fair and well-groomed, but his clear eyes were oozing with sadness, which made Aaron's heart sink. He never actually expected Jack to agree to the solution that he proposed earlier on. "You've decided?" "No, I merely want to have a future with Sylvia," Jack said as he lowered his head. "Besides, I also need to be responsible for her." Aaron's expression was slightly cold. He could not bear to drive the car any further, and he slammed on the brakes and parked the car by the side of the road. In a very helpless tone, he muttered, "Don't tell me that you guys have already—" "No, I didn't break my promise to you," Jack said as he frantically waved his hands. Alas, shortly after, he blushed and said, "Well, we've only touched certain areas of our bodies." Aaron fell completely speechless. He glanced sideways at him without speaking, and he seemed as if he was looking at a fly. He could finally understand why Jeffrey was hostile towards him in the past. However, they were men after all. Besides, April had also made a reasonable point that it was rare for couples to be intimate on purely emotional terms. Aaron stared at Jack, and he was already mentally prepared, and the air remained still for a very long time before Aaron abruptly replied coldly, "In that case, you certainly have to be responsible for her. If you're a man, you should be bolder and take responsibility for your actions." Jack was stunned for a moment before he said emotionally, "Brother." Aaron felt like cursing 1,000 times in his heart. Who the fuck was his brother? However, he restrained himself and said, "When I was dating April back then, I already felt like I should be responsible for her even when I merely kissed her. We also faced hurdles together. Our family was against us dating, and her father was going to jail. But none of these mattered. I could overcome them and help her resolve these problems. When a man meets a woman whom he loves, he'll gradually become more outstanding, braver, and perfect, because he wants to bring happiness to his partner." In the past, Aaron thought that he was already a perfect man. After he met April, however, he realized that there were many things that he needed to work on. A look of confusion flashed across Jack's jet-black eyes. He seemed as if he did not understand what Aaron said, but it also appeared as if he understood something. "No matter which path you choose to take, you have to shelter the woman you love from the storm. Regardless of how strong Sylvia is, there's bound to be moments when she's weak," Aaron said with a mix of emotions. "If you can't do this, then it's best to leave her while it's not too late." "I don't want to," Jack objected. His pupils shrank and he shook his head violently. "I can do anything for Sylvia. I'm just afraid that someone will snatch Sylvia away from me. Do you understand my feelings?" "No, because I'm confident in myself," Aaron replied arrogantly. Jack stared at the ground and said, "If I clear all the obstacles and return only to find that Sylvia has married another man, then what's the point? On the other hand, I can't marry her in advance either. If I can't make it back, at least she can still marry someone else." Aaron was stunned for a moment before replying, "Don't worry. Sylvia's a cop. When she knows what you've left for her, you'll become a hero in her heart, and she'll love you even more." "Really?" Jack's eyes glimmered. "Of course." This was certain. "Brother, in that case, I've decided to be undercover," Jack said seriously. When Aaron met Jack's pure, innocent eyes, he suddenly felt as if he had done something exceptionally sinful. Actually, you can still give this some more thought. He might not be able to make it back. Sylvia has said in the past that she hopes that the man she loves will tread on 7 auspicious clouds to ask for her hand in marriage. I only knew afterward that she meant that she hoped for him to be a peerless hero. I'm not one," Jack muttered. "But I'm willing to give it a try for her sake. A hero shouldn't bring danger to his girlfriend and hide behind her back to avoid the problem. Don't you think?" Aaron's throat felt dry, and he was at a loss for words. At that moment, He admired Jack. Perhaps Sylvia did not pick the wrong man this time. The car gradually came to a stop at the parking lot in the villa, and Aaron said with a mix of emotions, "I'll tell Sylvia about you being undercover after you leave. She won't agree if she knows about this in advance." Aaron knew Sylvia's temperament too well. She always took Jack under her wing, so she probably would not be able to bear to let him suffer any hardships. Jack merely nodded his head. As they entered the villa, Jackie ran towards them and barked. However, Sylvia remained seated on the sofa with her back facing towards them, and she ate her fruits without turning around. She was quite annoyed because she felt that no matter what the reason was, it was unacceptable for Jack to not contact her for one whole day and night. He did not even answer his call, which caused her to worry dreadfully. He never considered her perspective at all. "Sylvia?" Jack quickly walked over. When he saw the fruits in her hands, he suddenly felt hungry and his stomach growled. Sylvia threw him a cold look before turning back and continuing to watch the television, as though he was transparent like air. Little Apple crawled across the sofa and sprawled across Sylvia's shoulders before saying in a childlike voice, "Auntie, I want to eat the orange." There, Sylvia said. She then peeled a slice of orange and fed it to him. Little Apple smacked his lips, savoring the fruit. On the other hand, Jack watched him in envy. He also wanted Sylvia to feed him an orange. "Sylvia, are you still angry with me?" Jack asked in a fawning manner as he sat down beside her. "I'm not angry," Sylvia replied, but her eyes never looked away from the television. "You can come and go as you please. It's fine even if you don't ever hit me up again or answer my calls. Brother, why did you bring him over?" Aaron snorted silently, and he felt like cursing her for her hypocrisy.
"Little Apple, let's head outside with Daddy to look at the doggy, all right?" April carried Little Apple and dragged Aaron out. After all of them were gone, Jack quickly squatted down and grabbed hold of Sylvia's hand. He then laid his cheeks on her tiny hands and said, "Sylvia, don't be mad at me anymore." "Jack, stop bothering me." Sylvia retracted her hand in anger. "I understand if you don't want to take care of me since you've been doing so every day for such a long time. If you're out of patience and want to take a break, you can just let me know about it. But was it necessary to ignore my calls? You didn't even reply to my messages. Do you want to break up with me? You can say it to my face if you want to. I don't like to beat around the bush. Don't give excuses like losing track of time because you've been performing experiments in the laboratory. I've never seen any other scientist behave like this." She was not a superficial woman who would easily succumb to the seduction of beauty. She forcefully shoved him away and chided, "Jack, answer me properly. Keep your hands off me." "I didn't, Sylvia. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten any food for a day and night." "Serves you right for not eating," Sylvia said as she glared at him viciously. "I didn't stuff your mouth to stop you from eating. You can stop playing the victim now." "Sylvia, I couldn't eat," Jack said while shaking his head. "Other people are forcing me to break up with you, but I'm unwilling to. I felt miserable, so I hid in my room and neither ate nor drank anything." Sylvia was stunned for a while before she reacted angrily. "Who did this? My brother or my dad? I'll go talk to them and teach them a lesson. Do they seriously think that they can just step all over me just like that?" "No," Jack hastily denied it. "It's Christian." Sylvia was stunned. She knew Christian, who was there when they went to Europe to protect Jack. She had guessed that he was somewhat a part of Interpol. "Sylvia, calm down. Will you listen to me?" Jack hugged her around her shoulders. "I need to tell you about something from the past. When I was 23 years old, I was developing a project related to dark matter. I was just curious about it, so I went in without much thought. However, as the project continued, I reached a breakthrough. But if the results of my research ended up with the wrong people, This could affect the survival of all of our future sons and daughters. Sylvia was shocked. If you knew about the dangers, why did you go into the project in the first place? Many scientists don't know or don't consider the risk of their work when they're so blinded by the chase. Things weren't so clear to me back then either. Jack grimaced. Of course, it can serve good use as well, but not right now. When I came to Rosewood City, I wanted to stay far away from where our lab was in the past, and I was trying to hide from it as well. Remember when my lab assistant leaked information about my work when we were in France? He escaped the country to join the Tox organization. Now that they know about the existence of the study materials of dark matter, they have their eyes on me now. Sylvia was breathing more quickly now, and her eyes were much darker. Jack clenched her hands. The elevator incident, and when you got shot, those were all warnings that they were sending to me. Sylvia refused to believe what he was saying, shaking her head in disbelief. She had contemplated the possibility of something like that before, but now she did not want this to be true. Sylvia, I'm telling you the truth. Interpol is on the move now. It was the first time Jack had spoken to her so seriously. The organization is big, and they have connections all over the world. We need international cooperation to take them down altogether, but it's going to take a while. So I'll have to leave Rosewood City for the time being. Okay, I'll come with you. I can protect you. Sylvia nodded her head right away. I'll apply for a transfer. I've been tasked to protect you before. I'm a cop after all. You should stay in Rosewood City. Jack interrupted her. He sounded firm and decisive. Jack! Sylvia flung his arms away, frustrated. What do you mean? You don't want me to follow you? Or are you going to find another woman in the time being? Jack kissed her lips before she could finish her sentence. When she grew quiet, he slowly drew apart and said softly, Sylvia, why do you think I'm leaving? I don't want to bring you into this. Do you know why the elevator malfunctioned the last time? They used a device that interfered with the radio frequency of the converter. The culprit was on the roof of the building opposite yours. They weren't even close to you, so you won't be able to handle these people. Sylvia was terrified. She never imagined that her life would become intertwined with sophisticated criminals like them, but she had never cowered and withdrawn from a fight. And you can deal with them? Will they leave me alone once you leave? They already know that I'm your girlfriend. They may even use me to threaten you. I won't hand over my work, even then, Jack said with resolve. Sylvia fell completely silent. Right, even if that was the case. She was slightly frustrated that her boyfriend had made up his mind without any hesitation. Jack scrambled for an explanation when he saw that she was quiet. It's not that I don't care about you. It's just that I have a duty and responsibility as a scientist. If I hand my work over, I'll be doing more harm to a lot of people. So don't be hurt. If you're not around, I'll join you over on the other side. I'll never leave you alone. Don't say such things. Sylvia reached out to hold him. I'm a police officer after all. I understand the importance of the greater good, and I know that you're doing the right thing. I just want to shoulder this together with you. Besides, will you be all right with leaving me? Won't you be worried? Your brother and father will protect you, Jack replied confidently. Once I leave, Christian will be arresting the people around here, and you'll be safe after that. If you leave with me, you'll be in more danger. You have to spare a thought for your family. Sylvia understood that he was not going to bring her with him no matter what. When are you coming back then? A few months? Half a year? A year? Jack bit his lips and stared at her for a while. He paused for a moment before saying, The longest I'll have to stay there is 3 years. I may be able to call you or text you. Sylvia fell completely silent. She rubbed her hair in confusion and pushed his hands away. She was about to go crazy. Her ex-boyfriend had left to serve for 8 years, and now her current boyfriend was going to leave for 3 years again. He could not even text or call her. Sylvia, Christian has asked me to break up with you, but I can't bear to do that. Jack walked up to hug her as he did not want to be further apart from her than he had to. Your brother told me that we have to be honest with each other in a relationship. No matter what happens in the end, I have to respect and honor you. I don't want to break up with you, but I'm terrified of losing you. I know I'm putting you in a difficult position, but this is the only solution I can think of right now. The only solution? Sylvia forcefully pushed him away, about to erupt in anger. Jack, I'm a human being and a woman. I'm giving you a choice. Either you bring me along and face our obstacles together, or we're breaking up. Jack could not answer her. How could he bring her along? He was not even sure if he was going to come back alive. However, if they broke up now, she might be married to someone else by the time he could return. He was utterly despondent. What was the right thing to do? Sylvia was furious when she saw that he had gone quiet. She was on the verge of tears. 3 years. A long time indeed. Would he still love her the same way once he came back? Would things have changed by then? She had been hurt once before, and she did not dare to go through that again. However, she could not bear to give it up right now either. They had just gotten engaged, and they were deeply in love at this moment. The living room was dead silent for a long time before Jack abruptly stood up and walked to the door. Thinking that he was about to leave her, Sylvia grabbed an apple on the table and hurled it at him angrily with reddened, tear-stained eyes. Jack, I forbid you from leaving if you don't make things clear right now. The apple hit his back, causing him to wince in pain. He turned to look at her pitifully. I wasn't going to leave. I was going to go get your brother to discuss things with him. What do you mean? Are you going to ask my brother to push me? Of course he's not going to let me accompany you. Sylvia hated the fact that she was not able to walk now. Otherwise, she would drag him to the bed and teach him a lesson. Who said that I won't let you go? All of a sudden, Aaron walked in with a little apple in his arms. Sylvia, I heard you screaming and shouting at the door. How can you treat Jack so badly? Meanwhile, April nearly tripped on the shoe cabinet while following behind him. Did she hear herself correctly? Was this still her mean and petty husband? Aaron had been seeing Jack as a thorn in his flesh for a long time, but he was now defending him instead. Sylvia was speechless for a while as well. Her tears dried and she was not sniffling anymore. On the contrary, Jack looked like his savior had just arrived and he walked over quickly. He said pitifully, Brother, what should I do? She won't listen to me. Sylvia was stunned. From the way he was talking to Aaron, it seemed as though they were biologically related to each other. What was going on? I'll talk to her. Aaron patted his shoulder and walked over to the couch. Frowning, he asked, Sylvia, can't you be a little more mature and thoughtful? Why am I the immature one here? Sylvia glared at him angrily. Imagine if April leaves you for 3 years and you can't even text or call her. No matter how strong I am, I'm not secure enough to go on like this. 3 years is a long time, and things and people will change. Either you let me go with him and protect him, or we can just break up now. She was choking up as she finished her sentence. She felt a pang in her chest as if someone was ripping her heart out. Ever since she broke up with Jeremy, she had lost the courage to wait for someone, despite knowing that Jack did not mean for any of this to happen. I don't want to break up. Jack's face was pale with terror. Don't worry, I won't let you guys break up. Aaron comforted him gently. He turned to Sylvia and said sternly, You were the one who insisted on getting together with him at the beginning. You can't call for a breakup now. Jack's a great guy. He has a gentle disposition. He's good to you. He's handsome, and he's also a talented scientist. Jack is a blessing given to you. Sylvia's eyes nearly popped out of her sockets. He had come over to fetch Jack. He was a completely changed person now. Look at what he was saying. These were the things that her grandma used to say when she tried to convince Aaron to support her relationship with Jack. Are you really my brother? Sylvia was upset. What did he say to you? Did he brainwash you? I admit that he's very outstanding in many areas, but I need a companion. I'm not certain that he won't betray me in the 3 years we're apart, and I'm also not certain that he'll still love me. Well, I guess we can put things on hold for now. We'll see what happens when he comes back 3 years later. Jack looked down at the floor like a sad puppy. You can't say that. Aaron was in a dilemma, and he looked perplexed. Finally, he spoke softly. I didn't want to tell you at the beginning because I was scared that I would just worry you unnecessarily, but I have to be frank with you. Once he leaves, he's not just going to hide. He's going undercover in talks. His mission is to figure out the location of the headquarters of the organization, so the police can take down the entire organization in its entirety. Sylvia inhaled sharply. April did the same too. They were both shocked to discover this information. This doesn't sound too safe, Sylvia murmured. He's so introverted, it'll be too dangerous, and he'll be playing with fire. He's doing all of these things so that he can be with you forever. Aaron was frowning deeply now. He told me that he wants you to think of him as a hero. You're right, he's timid and introverted, but he's also courageous because of his love for you. I admire him for doing this as well. Sylvia, how can someone like him change his mind about you after 3 years? Sylvia was shaken. Aaron's words resonated with her deeply. In her mind, Jack had always been a rose in a greenhouse that she fought hard to protect. Right now, the fragile flower was saying that he was willing to take on the risk of this dangerous mission to be with her forever. She was terrified and horrified by this thought. I'm not agreeing to this. She was vigorously shaking her head, her body trembling. You can't be protecting him forever, Aaron said unceremoniously. His enemy is powerful and formidable, so you won't be able to protect him against them anyway. The police are waiting it out to catch the big fish. And if they don't excavate the entire organization, you two won't be able to spend the rest of your lives together in peace. Easy for you to say. It's not your loved one who's leaving right now. Sylvia glared at him angrily. Aaron would frequently infuriate her, but she had never felt this amount of rage before. If he doesn't come back alive, who's going to take responsibility for that? Who? You? He's small, frail, and timid, and he can't even tell a lie properly. He'll easily blow his cover. Aaron chuckled. You probably don't know him well enough then. As if you know him better than I do? He's my man. Sylvia was furious. Anyway, if you want him to go undercover, you'll have to step over my dead body first. For a moment, everyone was silent. Jack looked around, his lips pursed. Finally, he stepped out and said, Sylvia, I think your brother's right. I have the right to make this decision by myself. You would do the same if you were in my position. How could it be the same? I'm a cop. I perform well in adrenaline-filled situations, and I'm agile and skilled. What about you? What do you have? Sylvia asked anxiously with frustration. Aaron sighed in frustration. If you're so agile, then why did you end up in a wheelchair after getting shot? Why were you nearly burnt to death in the lab? He was the one who rescued you. If a fight really ensues, I'm sure he'll beat you with his high-tech gadgets. Sylvia was shocked. Why did she find that so familiar sounding? Was she the one who had said that to him? Sylvia, I'm not just doing this for you. Jack looked at her seriously. I'm doing this for my parents too, as well as those people who have died because of this organization. If no one stops them, more and more people will end up getting hurt in the future. Secondly, I was the one who created this problem in the first place. It was my research, so I need to solve this myself. You're right. I'm terrified and scared, and I've never fought criminals before. But I know that I have to, for your sake. I want to be with you forever. Not just for a short while. Besides, you like heroes. I may not be a hero, but I still want to make you proud in my own way. I'll be brave for you. After we started dating, I changed a lot. I used to dislike talking to people, and I was always in my own world. But now I know how much happiness there can be with others in my world, and the amount of bliss I can receive from interacting with someone I like. As long as I have you in my heart and mind, I'm certain that I can do this. I promise you that I'll come back alive. All right? It was the first time he said so many words in one go. Sylvia had burst into tears halfway through his speech. Tears were incessantly rolling down her cheeks. She pondered about when she had first met him, when he would tag along behind her like a fool. Throughout their relationship, he had learned to stand in front of her whenever danger appeared before her. "Jack, you fool! Why did I fall in love with such a fool?" She choked up. "Because I'm a fool who would change for you," Jack said softly and hugged her tightly. "When I come back, I hope that you'll be proud of me." Sylvia bit her lips tightly. She could not bear to say a word, afraid that she might break down if she opened her mouth. April sighed gently, wiping a tear at the corner of her eye. She was moved by the scene in front of her as well. The peace and lives of ordinary people like her probably depended on the sacrifices of the police and scientists, as well as their altruistic contributions. At dinner, Sylvia lost her appetite just thinking about the prospect of Jack going undercover. She still couldn't accept the full reality of the situation. On the other hand, Jack had a good appetite. He hadn't eaten in days, and he swiftly wiped out all of the vegetables on the table. "Don't just eat vegetables. Have some meat, too." Sylvia sounded sorrowful as she placed food on his plate. "You may not even get to eat over there." Jack swallowed his food and said, "Sylvia, I'm not going to prison, you know." "I'd rather have you go to prison." Sylvia grimaced. All she had to do was wait for him to come out of prison. On the contrary, she didn't know if he would even be able to come back from this mission. Jack did not utter a single word. "Do you know what you have to do when you're undercover?" Sylvia asked suddenly. "It's pretty complicated." "I don't think you should be teaching him tips," Aaron interrupted her. "His appearance and disposition is his best disguise. He looks like an innocent, gullible person without any malicious intentions." Sylvia just wanted to ignore him now, and she did not even want to look him in the eye. Aaron was snubbed by his sister at the dinner table. After dinner, Jack pulled Sylvia along for a walk outside. He treasured the time they had left with each other, probably because he was going to leave her soon. Aaron waited by the windowsill and watched the two of them from inside the house. He sighed deeply. "Why do I feel like I'm pushing someone so pure and innocent into dangerous territories? April, do you think I'm being too cruel? What if something really happens to Jack? Sylvia may not forgive me, her own brother, for the rest of my life." April patted his shoulders gently. "I don't know, but I know that if it was you, you would go immediately, even if I'll dread that and be unwilling to give you away. I'll probably give you my quiet support. I know you'll be doing something for the greater good, so I think Sylvia does understand the implications. She's just saying these things, but I'm sure she's proud of Jack deep down." Aaron looked at her with affection as he held her hands. Sylvia was looking up at the moon above with an extremely heavy heart. "Jack, I've been a cop for so many years. When I was in the police academy, I had a friend who was transferred to be an undercover agent. Later, he never returned." A sharp pang of pain suddenly hit her chest. Jack scratched his head. "But you weren't afraid to become a cop because of that, right?" Sylvia stayed silent. Of course, being a cop was dangerous, but it was also a heroic job that she was proud of. She was part of something bigger, upholding safety and justice. "Your brother's right. I'm not as weak as you imagine me to be." Jack clutched his trousers tightly. "When I was 12, I went to Vietnam with my father for work. However, his laboratory went up in an explosion, and I was playing in the building when the explosion happened. I was buried beneath all that rubble and debris for 10 days before I was rescued. Thankfully, I survived that incident. Sylvia was shocked. She had never heard about this accident before. Jack squatted down beside her, with his arms hugging his knees. It was all dark, and I didn't even know how much time had passed. I was stuck in a small space, and I was terrified. I kept crying and crying for someone to come and save me, but no one knew that I was right there beneath the rubble. A lot of people from the laboratory who knew me had died in the explosion as well. Moreover, my dad was unconscious and my mother was in New Zealand on a stargazing trip. It was impossible to reach anyone. I was thirsty and hungry. I could only drink my blood and urine. Back during the drills in the police academy, Sylvia had trouble when she was locked up in an airtight carriage for only 4 hours. As a result, she could hardly imagine how Jack had managed to make it through those 10 days. Probably because the memory of that period was too painful, Jack's hands trembled as he held on to Sylvia's. I passed out from hunger every single time. Whenever I woke up, I could only see the pitch-black surroundings, and I felt like I would rather die. But when I mulled over it seriously, I realized that I couldn't bear to die. On the 7th day, many of the rescue teams left, and they only found me on the 10th day. I could only hear the numerous sounds around me at that time, as a light had stung my eyes and I could barely open them. When I woke up, my father was beside me. He said that he had only regained consciousness 2 days ago, and the moment he woke up, he immediately asked the rescue team to look for me again. My mother only knew that something had happened to me on the 20th day, Jack recounted. Sylvia's lips quivered in anger as she said, "Your parents are too much. They should have never neglected their son, even if it was for the sake of work." This was especially so for Jack's mother, who had been uncontactable for so many days. "I don't blame them. They've been immersed in the research ever since I was a child," Jack said softly. "When I was a child, I also yearned for their company and I acted like a spoiled kid in front of them. Later on, I gradually grew up and realized that they also had their sense of purpose in life. But I was afraid. At that time, I wondered why nobody could remember me. I thought that perhaps a person like me was destined to be forgotten by others. I didn't want to talk or interact with others. I didn't want to." "Say no more," Sylvia interrupted him. She could not bear to listen anymore, and she pulled him towards her before hugging him and burying her face in his chest. At that moment, she wished that she could have known him earlier, so that she could bring more warmth into his life. "See, Sylvia, I could even make it through 10 days and 10 nights, so I'm not that weak," Jack continued as he looked down at her and bent over to caress the back of her head. "Although I had no responsibilities to bear back then when I was buried underground, I couldn't bear to die. Now that I have to be responsible for you, I can't bear to bring you with me." "I get it," Sylvia replied as she shut her eyes heavily and nodded her head. "Go ahead then, but I have one condition. You have to return alive." It was all right even if he returned as a disabled person. She was willing to take care of him for the rest of his life. The next day, early at 6:30 a.m., Sylvia opened her eyes and saw that Jack was still huddled in bed. He probably hadn't rested well for the past 2 days, as he was fast asleep. Even in his sleep, his hands tightly held onto hers. She gave him a light peck on the forehead before quietly pulling her hand away. After she tucked him in, she silently slipped out through the door. She usually slept in, but she could barely fall asleep last night. Sylvia closed her eyes, her thoughts running wild inside her mind. The chef had also just gotten out of bed, and when she realized that Sylvia was already awake so early in the morning, she immediately went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. At 7:20 a.m., Aaron, who was dressed in sportswear, went downstairs with a carton of milk in his hands. When he saw Sylvia supporting herself against the sofa as she slowly attempted to walk, his brows knitted into a tight frown. "What are you doing? The doctor said that you need to wait for at least another week," he said. "I want to recover quickly so that I can return to work," Sylvia replied as she looked up. There was a deep look in her pitch-black eyes, and it was hard to read her emotions. Aaron was momentarily stunned. He felt slightly unfamiliar with the woman standing before him. It was as if something inside of her had changed overnight. "I've made up my mind," Sylvia continued. "I want to recover quickly and join Interpol. If I can't go with him, at least I can work hard and support him whenever he needs it." Aaron was so astonished that he remained speechless for a long time. "It's not that easy to join Interpol," Aaron said. He only managed to recover from his shock after a very long time. "You're already far from being an average policewoman. You're hardly there in terms of acuity and dexterity." "I know, but I can learn," Sylvia said with determination. "I can take it no matter how much I suffer or how tiring it is." Aaron fell silent. He was not sure if he had made the right decision this time. As a brother, he merely wanted his sister to be happy, but he realized how hard it was to do that now. By now, everyone was aware that Sylvia was about to get married. Furthermore, many people had seen Jack during the new year, and thus many of their relatives and friends had anticipated Sylvia's wedding banquet. However, her boyfriend left her again, and the wedding was canceled once more. Taking into account the previous incident with Jeremy, it was the second time that such a thing had happened to Sylvia. She would undoubtedly be the target of gossip and would suffer a significant blow. Especially Jeremy's parents would certainly gloat over her misfortune. Yet, perhaps all these no longer mattered to Sylvia. For the next few days, Jack did not spend much time with Sylvia, as there were some basic skills that he needed to learn before he could become undercover. It was especially crucial to learn several codes and how to contact the outside world. Sylvia did not idle around either, and she instructed Carlo to look into the talks organization. Surprised, Carlo asked, "Since when are you so interested in talks?" "Of course I'm interested," Sylvia replied as she lightly patted her injured legs. "Didn't you say before that the criminal who had shot and injured me was poisoned to death by talks? That's why I want to find out more about them." Carlo replied helplessly, "I'm not so sure about this. This information is classified, and now it seems that Jeremy is in charge of this case. During our department meeting the day before yesterday, it was said that he has been tasked by the upper management to arrest members of the talks organization. He has caught around 5 to 6 of them in Rosewood City." "Why him of all people?" Sylvia asked in surprise. Interpol must have changed their strategy to better ensure her safety after Jack had decided to become an undercover. However, Sylvia did not expect Interpol to entrust such an important case to Jeremy. It seemed that he was indeed highly regarded. "That's because he has worked in special forces and interacted with these international criminals before. He's experienced," Carlo replied. "I think you should ask him personally since you guys are acquainted after all." "Got it. Thanks." Sylvia hung up the call and, after a moment of hesitation, proceeded to call Jeremy. "Sylvia." Jeremy's uncertain tone could be heard after 10 seconds. "Yes, it's me." Sylvia spoke with honesty through gritted teeth. After he listened to what she had to say, he remained silent for a long time. "Forget it if you don't want to reply," Sylvia muttered. The information was classified, and Sylvia knew that she was putting him on the spot. "I can tell you that Talks is a very terrifying organization. 5 years ago, they created a new type of virus and unleashed it in a small town in Angola, which had a population of 50,000 people. That town is a ghost town now," Jeremy explained in a low voice. "Sylvia, that criminal's attempt to kill you was probably not a coincidence. It was intentional, and their goal is to capture Jack. But don't worry, I've fully found all of the members of the Talks organization stationed in the city. However, you shouldn't leave the city for the time being. You should also tell Jack to—" "Thank you," Sylvia said earnestly. "You should take care." Jeremy sounded as if he wanted to say something, but he stopped himself at the last second. It was spring in April. The grass had grown tall while the orioles had emerged out of their nest. Jack would soon fly to Rome to discuss the latest radio signal received from outer space with a group of scientists from the Astronomical Center. By then, with the exception of running, Sylvia could already walk normally. There was only a week left before Jack's departure, and Sylvia would drag Jack along to shop or hang out whenever she had time. Sometimes she would even bring him to the zoo and amusement park. She felt that Jack had a lonely childhood, so she wanted to keep him company to make up for that. By the time the couple came out of the movie theater in the evening, it was already 5:30 p.m. However, neither of them wanted to return home, and they merely wished that time would slow down. Sylvia clung onto Jack's arm as they slowly made their way through street after street. Eventually, they became exhausted, and Sylvia pointed at a bar as they walked past it. Jack took one glance at it, and his handsome face flushed uncontrollably under the sunset's glow. With his head lowered, he grabbed hold of Sylvia and walked ahead. It was not yet nighttime, and Sylvia was too audacious to make such a suggestion in broad daylight. Sylvia did not budge, and instead, she grabbed hold of him and began to play the coquette as she said, "Come on." "Sylvia, stop fooling around, all right?" Jack turned back and looked at her with a helpless and frustrated look in his eyes. "How am I fooling around?" Sylvia asked as she stomped her foot in annoyance. "You'll be gone for 3 years. Are we going to keep up with this and only have sex when you return after 3 years? You can endure it, but I may not be able to. No guarantee that I won't look for other men if the loneliness is unbearable." "I won't allow you to," Jack said as he quickly cupped her mouth. There was an anxious look in his eyes. Sylvia blinked her eyes before she forcefully pulled his hands away from her mouth and said, "No guarantees. I'll be 30 years old by the time you return. Do you expect me to remain a virgin at the age of 30? "Don't force me, Sylvia," Jack answered. A look of pain and conflict flashed across his eyes as he whispered, "I can't promise you." If he could not make it back, at least she would still be a virgin and still preserve her best for her future husband. Baffled, Sylvia stared at him for a moment before saying, "Jack, can you not be so conservative? You want me to wait for you, and yet you won't even touch me." Jack looked down guiltily and remained silent. The handsome young couple stood in front of the bar for a long time, and many people turned back to take a second glance at them. Eventually, Sylvia stuck her hands into her pockets and walked away. Jack immediately followed her, tugging the edge of her clothes gently and timidly like a child as he walked. Eventually, Sylvia went straight into a convenience store and bought 3 bottles of red wine. "Why did you buy so much alcohol?" Jack asked in astonishment. "It's not good to drink so much red wine." "It's none of your business," Sylvia replied crossly as she glared at him. Feeling aggrieved, Jack pursed his dainty lips and replied melancholically, "I won't dare to meddle in your affairs. Even if I want to do so in the future, I'll be too far away." Sylvia's heart ached when she had heard what he said. "I bought the wine for tonight's candlelight dinner," she replied. "I see," Jack murmured, his eyes instantly brightening up. Today would be a special night for the two of them. "But my alcohol tolerance is pretty low." "Having a low tolerance for alcohol is not an excuse to not drink," Sylvia said seriously. "It wouldn't be called a candlelight dinner if there's no red wine. It would just be a normal meal, and it wouldn't be romantic or beautiful. You're already a rather unromantic person to begin with. Can you accommodate me now that you're leaving soon?" "Am I seriously that unromantic?" Jack asked dejectedly. "I didn't know that. I've never had candlelight dinners with other girls before. I'm scared that I'll do something bad when I'm drunk," he said. Sylvia's eyes gleamed. She was anticipating him getting drunk and doing something wild. But of course, she would not say that out loud. Sylvia appeared serious as she said, "It's not that easy to get drunk. It's exaggerated in TV shows and novels. Usually, you'll still be completely conscious after you drink. If you're still reluctant to do so, I'll just drink alone to entertain myself." After Sylvia said this, she laughed at herself self-deprecatingly, causing Jack to feel slightly guilty when he heard her. He was afraid that Sylvia would be displeased with him. Furthermore, He would be gone for such a long time, and he was worried that if he did not agree to have a candlelight dinner with her, she might slowly lose interest in him. "Sylvia, let's just go home." Immediately after that, Sylvia held onto the red wine bottle and strode forward. Jack watched her silhouette shrink for a while before quickly chasing after her and grabbing hold of her hand. She allowed him to hold on to her, but she did not let him entwine his fingers with hers. Once they reached Sylvia's apartment, Jack immediately went into the kitchen, intending to please her by whipping up a lot of delicious dishes that night. He wanted her to think that none of the men out there could ever compare to him. He prepared many delicious dishes for their dinner, such as chicken, duck meat, and pasta. After neatly laying them out across the table and lighting up the candles, he walked back into the living room to call Sylvia over. Meanwhile, Sylvia was lazily reclining on the sofa with a remote control in one hand and her phone in the other. On her phone, she said, "Jeremy, I can't thank you enough. I'll treat everyone to a meal once I end my shift the day after tomorrow. What should we eat? How about pasta? Great." Before she could complete her sentence, a shadow loomed over her and she saw Jack, donned in a checkered, sky blue apron. He stood beside her with his eyes wide open as he glared at her. His lips were pursed and downturned, while his brows were knitted into a tight frown. He had an anxious and unhappy look on his face and was even breathing heavily. "What's the matter?" Sylvia feigned ignorance and asked. Jack didn't utter a word. To think that she could ask him what was wrong? How could she contact Jeremy in private, thank him, and even offer to treat him to a meal? She was the one who had previously said that eating together was a romantic thing to do. It smells good. Dinner's ready. Let's eat," Sylvia said as she stood up right away. However, just as she took a step forward, Jack suddenly grabbed hold of her hand. There was a stubborn and childish look in his eyes as he said, "I won't allow you to have food with Jeremy." "I'm not eating with him alone," Sylvia said as she blinked her eyes. "Carlo and the others are going too." "No," Jack said as he shook his head obstinately. "I object." "All right," Sylvia said while nodding her head. "Well, can we have a drink then? If not, then coffee?" Stunned for a moment, Jack replied anxiously, "It's not a matter of what you eat. It's because I don't like the idea of you eating with Jeremy." "Cut it out. We're colleagues, and it's not as if I'm having an affair," Sylvia replied as she walked over to the dining table to retrieve a tall boy, before pouring herself a glass of wine. Jack was momentarily shocked. She had asked him to drink with her, and yet she was drinking alone now. "Sylvia, I'm jealous," Jack said honestly and gloomily. "You're being too close to him." "Jack, can you stop it?" Sylvia chided. She then took a sip of the red wine and placed the wine glass down before she continued. "There's no passion and intimacy when we're together. Forget about the fact that there's no steak and that you've prepared a table of normal, home-cooked food for our candlelight dinner instead. You won't even drink red wine. Can you be a little more romantic?" Jack was stupefied. He couldn't understand why Sylvia suddenly became so furious on their last night together. Did she regret her choice, and was she reluctant to wait for him? Did she want to get back together with Jeremy? I didn't say that I'm not drinking," he stuttered. "Say no more," Sylvia interrupted him and continued to eat and drink without looking up. After taking 2 sips of wine, she began to look down at her phone. Jack had no idea what she was looking at, but she was smiling like a fool. He began to feel terrible, as though there were thousands of ants crawling around in his heart. To attract Sylvia's attention, he grabbed the wine glass in front of her and filled it up before saying, "See, Sylvia, I'm drinking as well." "Stop drinking. It's pointless. You make it seem as if I'm forcing you to drink," Sylvia replied as she casually picked up some vegetables. "Perhaps it's our way of life. Candlelight dinners aren't our thing." Afterward, she blew out the candles and continued, "Don't waste the candles." Jack was stunned, and his limbs were all tingling in panic. He gazed at her fixedly for quite some time, before eventually standing up to light up the candles again. Sylvia looked up and watched him for some time, with a faraway look in her eyes. Just then, she sighed and lifted her glass of red wine before saying, "Here, bottoms up." "Okay," Jack said after taking a deep breath. He gulped his wine down and finished it in one go. Sylvia was stunned. "Why did you finish it all at once?" she asked. "You said bottoms up?" Jack said dazedly. "So that means I'll have to finish the drink." Sylvia was completely speechless. Wrinkles formed on Sylvia's forehead. "It's just a pleasantry. You don't need to finish everything," she said. "Why didn't you say so before?" Jack replied as his fair face subconsciously turned red. "The red wine tastes terrible," he remarked. "The more you drink, the better it tastes," Sylvia replied, flashing him a gentle, beautiful smile. "Jack, you're truly gallant. It's the first time I've ever seen this side of you." Jack's eyes gleamed, and he nodded his head furiously as he said, "Actually, I don't think I'll lose out to Jeremy at all." Afterward, he filled up his glass again and continued, "Here's Sylvia. Cheers." Soon, there was barely any red wine left. Sylvia had yet to finish even a glass of red wine. She noticed that Jack's face was already completely red, and he seemed to be quite drunk as he sat across from her. He truly had a low alcohol tolerance, and even though he merely drank a minute amount of red wine, he was already quite drunk. Right now, his eyes could barely open, and he was starting to open up another bottle of red wine in his drunken state. Sylvia placed the fork down and walked over to place her hands down on his back gently. "Stop drinking. You're drunk," she whispered. "I'm not drunk. Not drunk," Jack said, shaking his head from side to side like a rattle drum. "I'm known for being able to hold my liquor well." Sylvia almost burst out laughing. She bent down and said, There, I'll help you lie down on the bed." Jack's ears quivered as though they had been tickled, and his breathing slowed down as he looked back at her. He felt as if he could see 3 Sylvias in front of him, and they were all swaying continuously. "Sylvia, why are there so many of you?" he asked. Sylvia erupted into laughter, and she helped him to get up. However, as Sylvia's leg had yet to recover fully, and because Jack was leaning against her, they could only walk very slowly. Meanwhile, Jackie circled them and barked. Sylvia gently kicked him aside without any hesitation and said, "Move aside, don't bother your owner." However, instead of moving aside obediently, Jackie began to prance around even more happily, as if it was waiting for them to put up a good show. Of course, Sylvia would not give him that satisfaction. The moment she entered the room, she immediately locked the door and ignored Jackie as he scratched away at the door violently. Suddenly, Jack left her and buried himself under the blanket. Sylvia felt an indescribable emotion, and she pulled Jack's blanket away without further ado. He was kneeling on his bed, with his hands curled in front of his chest. He blinked with dazed-looking eyes and mumbled, "I'm a little mole." Sylvia fell silent. She was completely dumbfounded. She had seen all sorts of drunken fits before, but it was her first time seeing someone pretend to be a mole. However, he looked extremely adorable, and it made her want to press him down on the bed. Jack then lowered his head and retreated into the blanket while squirming. He clawed the bed furiously with his hands, while also sinking his teeth into the blanket. "You're not a mole, you're Jack," Sylvia said as she pulled him up. "No, I'm a little mole," Jack repeated. There was a look of obstinance on his crimson-red face. "Even if a mole is buried underground, it can still crawl out. Little moles are the best." Sylvia instantly understood everything. Although many years had passed, the explosion and burial that occurred back then had left a lingering trauma in his heart. He wanted to transform into a mole because a mole could crawl out. That was probably what he felt back then. Nobody came to save him. As a result, he would rather turn into an animal. Sylvia suddenly felt a terrible, stifling sensation in her heart. She reached her hand out to hug him tightly from behind before speaking hoarsely. "Yes, you're a little mole. You're the little mole that I love the most." Jack stopped chewing on the blanket when he heard what she said, and he flashed her a silly grin before saying, "You're a female mole." A smile instantly formed on Sylvia's face as she heard him. "No, I'm not a female mole," she joked. "I'm a demoness from the cave of the silken web, and I'm going to eat you." She bared her teeth and flailed her 10 fingers threateningly. Jack jumped back in fear and immediately got onto all fours, hopping around on the bed to flee. "I don't want to be eaten by a demoness. I belong to Sylvia," he exclaimed. Sylvia laughed until the sides of her stomach ached when she realized that he could remember her, although he was thinking of himself as a mole. She then lunged toward him. Without going easy on him, she rode onto his back and said, There, I'm Sylvia. Lie down quickly." "No, you're a demoness," Jack spoke as he shook his butt violently in an attempt to shake her off. Sylvia grabbed hold of him to stop him. She then laid her head on his chest before taking his hand to place it on her cheeks. In a seductive voice, she said, "Take a good look. Does a demoness look this pretty? Have you ever seen such an alluring demoness?" Obviously, Jack could not see her face clearly, as she was sitting on top of him. It made him feel unbearably hot and uncomfortable, and he inevitably began to breathe more heavily. "Do you feel hot? If you do, I'll remove your clothes for you," Sylvia continued, and she deftly took off his apron and blazer. At the same time, Jack continued to wriggle his body without stopping. By hook or by crook, Sylvia handcuffed him again as she had done previously. It was awkward the first time she tried it, but it was undoubtedly easier for her this time. Previously, it was her first attempt, and because she was inexperienced and ignorant, she hurt Jack and herself. After they began to sleep together, they constantly explored each other, and thus they were long familiar with each other and aware of the other person's sensitive spots. Sylvia executed her attacks step by step, and it did not take long before Jack laid down his arms to surrender as he groaned in bed. "See? You should have known better than to be disobedient and make me resort to using the handcuffs on you so that I can make a move on you. Serves you right," Sylvia said as she stuck her arms akimbo. She stared down at the man below her, whose beauty was unrivaled, and she spoke in an exceptionally helpless voice. "I don't even know what to say about you. Why do you have to make a dignified and virtuous lady like me force myself on you like a virago? You can't blame me for having my way with you. I simply can't keep my cool and let you leave like that. Besides, you don't understand how I can only feel secure when I'm truly in possession of you. Who knows if you'll meet any evil and vicious female fatales after you leave me?" Sylvia let out a long, faint sigh before summoning all her courage and kissing him furiously. The previous painful experience was engraved in Sylvia's heart. Subsequently, however, she would get intimate with Jack whenever they had the chance, and she gained some experience as a result. Besides, she had been making a lot of preparations for this lately. She felt like there would unlikely be any problems. However, she had overlooked the painful sensation. Although she had some experience, it was still painful, and it felt as though she was being torn apart alive. She clenched her teeth tightly and told herself that it was all right. She had even experienced a gunshot before, and this was a far cry from that. Jack wreathed his body restlessly and his face flushed red. He no longer claimed to be a mole, and he blinked his jet black eyes. There was a deep look in his glistening eyes as he glanced at her. He swallowed hard and asked, "Sylvia, what are we doing now? Am I dreaming?" Sylvia forced herself to hold back her tears as she gritted her teeth and replied gently, "Yes, you're dreaming. I'm in your dreams." Jack's breath quickened when he heard what she had said. He wanted to sit upright, but one of his hands was handcuffed, which made him anxious and shy. "Sylvia, why am I having wet dreams again?" Sylvia fell completely silent. "Again?" Sylvia could not be bothered about the pain anymore, and she asked with keen interest, "Say, how many times have you had such dreams?" I'm not sure either," Jack replied with a flame of passion burning in his eyes, which was no longer as pure and black as they were before. "But this feels so realistic." "Yes, sometimes our dreams feel like reality," Sylvia said as she scratched her head and laid herself down on his chest daintily. Her jet black hair was sprawled out across his chest, which tickled him. "Since this is a dream, let's not waste such a beautiful moment, all right?" she asked. She bewitched him as she began to remove the handcuff that restrained him. Jack instantly changed from passive to aggressive, and he lunged toward her and flipped her down beneath him. Sylvia began to feel a strong, painful sensation, which drove her to scratch and claw Jack's body. Thankfully, he slowly entered the right frame of mind towards the end, and they finally began to feel something. It was a different feeling from what they had experienced in the past when they were together. Back then, what they had tasted was like grounded meat. This time, they could finally devour all of the meat and have an actual taste of it. She embraced him tightly, as though she was clinging onto the only piece of driftwood in the sea. At that very moment, all her anxiety and her reluctance to part with him instantly evolved into a sense of security. She understood his worries and concerns, but she was different from him. She could only live without regrets if she had possessed something before. She did not want to regret things in the future, and she wanted to leave a deep impression on his heart. She wanted him to know that he had to make it back alive because a woman would be waiting for his return. However, after getting drunk, Jack was no longer so gentle and tender towards her. Jack was woken up by his headache during the morning. His throat burned, and the hangover felt very uncomfortable. Furthermore, his body ached terribly, as though he had just completed a marathon. He opened his eyes with difficulty. The first thing he saw was a vintage chandelier. It looked familiar. It was Sylvia's home. He turned and found Sylvia's tiny head leaning against his shoulder. Her hair was unkempt and her lips were slightly bloated. In his eyes, she seemed even more charming than before. Under the blankets, he could feel one of her hands on his chest. Jack's body burned terribly in the face of such a seductive scene so early in the morning. However, he quickly realized that something was wrong. When he saw Sylvia's naked arm, which was marred with dense marks and exposed outside of the blanket, his heart skipped a beat. Did something happen last night? A strong sense of helplessness seized his heart. Jack lifted a corner of the blanket and sneaked a peek beneath, before quickly covering it back. He trembled like a leaf rustling in the wind. Neither of them had their clothes on. Furthermore, his body ached, but it was a different sensation from what he had experienced when they had hugged and kissed in the past. Could they have... Jack was dumbstruck, and his mind went blank with disbelief. What would he do if it had truly happened? How could he be responsible for Sylvia? Meanwhile, Sylvia stirred and woke up, probably because he was trembling too much. She felt as though her body had been run over by a car, and she was drained. She summoned all her strength to open her eyes, and she met his shocked gaze. Jack began to stutter incoherently. "Sylvia, last night, did we—" Sylvia blinked for a while before immediately wrapping the blanket around herself. She too seemed shocked as she said, "What did we do last night? Ouch. It hurts. My legs are aching. What happened?" After she said this, she massaged her temples, visibly tired and haggard. Jack scratched his messy short hair and wondered if he had been the one who made the move out of a drunken stupor, and that she was not the one who forced herself on him. He tried his best to recall what happened last night, but no matter how much he mulled over it, he could only remember snippets of how he rode her like a horse. It was extremely embarrassing that he had been so rough with Sylvia. "Jack, you seriously have a low alcohol tolerance," Sylvia complained, and she suddenly broke down in tears. "I'm sorry," Jack muttered helplessly. "I don't remember what happened after I drank a few glasses of wine last night." "What do you mean? Are you trying to shirk off responsibility?" Sylvia asked angrily. "I was a pure unmarried lady and a virgin." "No, absolutely not. I'll take responsibility for this." Jack spoke as his face changed from pale to red. Initially, he thought that Sylvia could still remarry if he did not survive. However, now that she had lost her virginity to him, he certainly could not die. He had to return alive and take responsibility for her. "It's good that you'll take responsibility. Forget it. I'm your girlfriend anyways," Sylvia replied as she let out a faint sigh and lay in bed listlessly. "But I just lost my first time so randomly like that. I don't even have any impression of it. Ouch, it hurts so much. Why do my legs ache so badly? I didn't know you were such a beast." Her words made Jack feel too abashed to show his face. Yes, how could he have been so beastly? He could not wrap his mind around it either. "Sylvia, let me give you a massage," he said. "Sure," Sylvia answered. She flipped over so that Jack could massage her under the blanket. "Sylvia, does it still hurt badly?" Jack asked. Sylvia snorted and replied, "My other leg hurts too." Jack immediately switched over to massage her other leg. "Move further up," Sylvia ordered. Her eyes were shut and she seemed to enjoy what he was doing. Jack froze and he felt as though he was put on the spot. If he moved further up, it would be— "What's wrong?" Sylvia asked as she opened one eye and shot him a bitter look. Jack quickly lowered his head and continued. However, an odd feeling gradually rippled through the air. Sylvia could hear his breath turn rough. When she opened her eyes once more, she noticed that his delicate cheeks were flushed, and there was a burning expression in his eyes that even he did not notice. Sylvia watched him for some time and spaced out. However, after a while, she abruptly grabbed hold of his hand and pulled him down forcefully. "Sylvia!" Jack crashed down on her, and his face turned red from feeling flustered. "Do you want it?" Sylvia asked in a soft, gentle voice as she placed her lips against his. Jack swallowed helplessly and replied, "Sylvia, What time is it now?" Sylvia cut him off and asked. Jack looked at the clock on top of her bed and it showed 7:30 a.m. He had a plane to catch at 1 p.m. and he had to leave by 10 a.m. latest. This meant that they only had several more hours left. When would they be able to meet again next time? Would they even be able to meet after this? Just then, his heart began to ache terribly, and he inevitably tightened his grip on Sylvia's hand. Similarly, Sylvia was also in a deep, somber mood. She desperately wished that this very moment could drag on longer. "Let's do it again," she murmured. "It already happened last night anyway. It doesn't make much of a difference whether it happens once, twice, or thrice," she said. Jack's eyes darkened. But But I'm scared that it'll be painful for you and you won't be able to take it, he replied dryly. You even said that you were exhausted just now. I think you can be gentler, Sylvia suggested as she hooked her arms around his neck and watched him with glistening eyes, which looked strangely alluring. Jack's mind buzzed. Finally, he could no longer hold himself back, and he lowered his head to seal her lips with a deep kiss. Sylvia hugged him back with all her might. Both of them seemed eager to do it again, probably because they were about to part ways soon. Although Jack could not remember the specific details from the night before, such a thing was always easier during one's second attempt. His male instincts quickly told him what to do. He only had a hazy recollection of how it felt last night. Now, however, he could feel everything clearly. Turbulent emotions poured out of his heart ceaselessly, and it was as if every single cell in his blood was boiling. It transformed him into another person, a wild, passionate, and impatient man. Sylvia! Sylvia! Although he repeated her name over and over again, it never seemed to suffice. They hugged and explored each other's bodies as if doomsday was coming. They only stopped when they were completely exhausted, feeling as if they truly belonged to each other. The phone on the floor had rung quite a few times. Having lost count of the number of times that it rang, Jack finally picked up the phone to answer the call as his legs trembled. Sir, you finally answered your phone. Do you know what time it is now? Christian's voice could be heard from the phone. It's 9:40 a.m. I would have thought that you had cold feet at the last minute if you continued not to pick up the phone. I didn't, Jack murmured. His heart sank when he realized how late it already was. Indeed, time flew quickly. To him, it felt as if he had only spent a short amount of time with her. Come down quickly, then. I'm waiting at the foot of Miss Bennett's apartment. Your luggage is already packed in the trunk, Christian urged. Okay, Jack replied. Jack seemed distracted as he placed his phone down. When he turned around, he noticed that Sylvia had already slipped her clothes back on silently without him realizing it. Sylvia, you should rest, he said. He knew how rough he had been just now. Although he had said that he would only do it once, he ended up doing it over and over again. As it was her first time last night, it would be normal if she could not take it. As a result, he felt very guilty. I'll send you to the airport, Sylvia said as she watched him calmly. It's all right. You must be exhausted, Jack replied. Even though he wanted to spend more time with Sylvia badly, his heart ached for her when he saw how tired she was. Oh, please, I'm a cop. I've experienced even more tiring things than this. Besides, even though I'm exhausted right now, I can rest well for the next few years since you won't be able to come back anyway, Sylvia explained. While this was what she said, her legs began to tremble from the terrible ache as she made her way towards the bathroom. However, she forced herself to hold it in. She could not slap herself in the face by proving herself wrong right after she spoke to Jack. Although Jack usually appeared to be gentle and refined, he looked quite strong just now. Perhaps he simply did not put his strength to good use in the past. Jack watched her silhouette longingly. In the past, he did not cherish mornings like these, and now he did not know when he would be able to see such a scene again in the future. He could not help but hurry over to Sylvia to give her a strong hug from the back. After burying his face in the nape of her neck, he whispered, Sylvia, I love you. Those were 3 simple words, yet Sylvia froze when she heard them. She turned around and met his strongly passionate eyes. She stared at him for a while in an attempt to imprint his face in her mind, so that time would not wear off their feelings for each other. I'll wait for you, she said. I love you. I'll wait for you. Jack thought that I'll wait for you actually sounded much better than I love you. The sound of running water could be heard from the bathroom, and when Jack searched on the floor for his clothes, he suddenly stumbled upon a handcuff, which had slipped off from the clothes. He picked it up in confusion and felt puzzled about why there would be a handcuff here when Sylvia usually kept such items in the drawer. He inspected it for some time, and he suddenly noticed a red bruise around his wrist that was not very uniform. He then recalled that Sylvia had also used a handcuff to restrain him when they were in the house previously, which in turn left a similar bruise. Why did such a mark appear again? Could it be that last night? Right at that moment, Sylvia had finished washing up, and she came out of the bathroom. Jack walked over to her with a handcuff in his hands and gazed at her suspiciously. "Sylvia, honestly speaking, did you restrain me with a handcuff last night?" he asked. "I even have a bruise on my hand." He had an accusatory expression on his face as he showed his wrist to Sylvia. Sylvia swept a glance at it, before calmly raising her eyebrows and replying, "You mean this? The cheek of you to ask." "Really?" Jack was slightly doubtful. "Why? Do you think I'm lying to you?" Sylvia asked with her arms crossed, giving off an overbearing aura. "Let me tell you this. You better not deny what you've done. I dare you to swear to God." Jack was instantly rendered speechless. His fair face was flushed red with embarrassment, and he no longer suspected her. With his head lowered, he stared at his feet and wished that he could dig a hole and crawl into it. Sylvia immediately trolted and said, "Do you know what you're doing? You're trying to push the blame onto other people after taking advantage of the situation." "I was wrong, Sylvia. I shouldn't have doubted you." Jack apologized obediently. "I'm a despicable and sanctimonious hypocrite." You're not exactly a sanctimonious hypocrite. We all have our inner beast after all," Sylvia said as she waved her hands. "I won't take it to heart, but don't ever doubt me like that again in the future. I've always been a straightforward person," she said. "Got it," Jack replied, still ashamed to show his face. So he did unleash his inner beastly self last night. How shameless. At 10 a.m., after some dawdling, Jack went into the elevator with Sylvia when all of a sudden his body trembled violently. "Fuck!" he cursed. "What's wrong?" Sylvia asked in shock and subconsciously leaned over to the walls of the elevator. "Is there something wrong with the elevator again?" Jack seemed deathly pale as he said, "No, I thought it was something serious," Sylvia muttered as she rolled her eyes. "No way that can happen so easily." "You can't be certain," Jack replied with a serious expression on his face. "You're healthy, and I don't usually smoke or drink, so I don't have any health issues either. Maybe it's easier for such a thing to happen to us." Sylvia only managed to react to the situation after staying silent for quite some time. She then shot him a cold look and asked, "Did you just say that I'm brawny?" Jack blinked, and when he pondered about it again, he quickly realized how inappropriate it was to use such a term to describe a girl. He quickly said, "I meant to say that you're very healthy." Sylvia snorted coldly and replied, "Being healthy and being brawny mean two different things. Are you intentionally trying to anger me now that you're leaving?" Jack lowered his head and pouted as if it was merely a slip of his tongue. "Don't be upset. You know that I'm not good with words. I just want to say that you're much healthier and taller than the average woman. I really like how you are anyway." "Yeah, right," Sylvia said as she rolled her eyes at him. It was true that he was bad with words, because the more he spoke, the angrier she felt. "Let's get some birth control pills later," Jack suggested after mustering up his courage. "Sylvia, could you wait until I'm back before you become pregnant?" "Don't worry, I don't intend to get pregnant and raise the kid all by myself while I await your return. I'm not that noble or inspirational," Sylvia muttered with a sigh. "I'll get it on my own later. Do you want everyone to know what we did last night?" Jack nodded his head when he heard what she had said. However, he inevitably felt slightly disappointed, as it sounded like a good idea to return home to discover that he had fathered a child. He could not help but caress Sylvia's stomach and say, "I'm sorry, baby. Daddy can't have you." Sylvia was speechless. He made it sound as if she was already pregnant. Christian and Mr. Maxwell were both in the car park. With a cold expression on his face, Mr. Maxwell ignored Jack. It seemed like he was still angry about Jack's decision to be undercover. After Jack and Sylvia entered the car, Mr. Maxwell then said reluctantly and longingly, "Sir, ever since you've graduated, you've never left me and headed off alone for such a long time. I'm genuinely quite worried. Why don't you reconsider this?" "Well, don't persuade me anymore. Thank you for taking care of me all this time," Jack said softly. "Could I trouble you to take good care of my parents after I leave? After all, they're still unaware of this. You certainly can't tell them about it because I need the Talks organization to believe I've sincerely pledged my allegiance to them. They'll certainly feel terrible if they know," Mr. Maxwell replied with a bitter smile. After a moment of silence, Jack said, "I believe they won't feel so terrible if they immerse themselves in their lab work." Mr. Maxwell sighed and replied, "Don't think of it that way. You're their only child, and your parents have been extremely angry towards themselves over the incident that happened back then. I've never blamed them," Jack answered as he shook his head. He could also emphasize with his parents after falling in love with astronomy and physics. Jack held on to Sylvia's hand tightly throughout the journey. Christian informed, "Based on the information that we've obtained, it seems that quite a few people from the Talks organization have infiltrated Italy. I suppose that they intend to kidnap you directly after their men in Rosewood City were arrested. The number of refugees in Italy is growing, and it is the best place to start. After you leave with them, I'm sure they'll solicit you based on your current capabilities. To outsiders, you might as well appear to be a friendless and mad scientist whose only wish is to stay in the laboratory. Through this, they wouldn't be too suspicious of you even if you worked for them." Jack nodded his head. "After you've infiltrated them, you shouldn't make any move for the time being, and neither should you contact us. Wait for a year or two and earn their trust," said Christian. After a pause, he continued, "You can research a few projects for them when you have to, so that they'll know your value. This is inevitable since you have to earn their trust." After parking the car, Christian and Mr. Maxwell went to retrieve the luggage from the back seat out of consideration for the couple. "Sylvia, you should take good care of yourself," Jack said with concern as he glanced sideways at her. There would be other people present once they reached the airport later. However, when he turned to face her, he saw tears in Sylvia's eyes. He was slightly stunned. Sylvia was actually crying. His heart ached badly, and he desperately wished that she would never cry over him if it was possible. "Sylvia, I'll make it back. I promise I'll make it back," he said as he caressed the back of her head to console her. He then whispered softly with resolve, "When I'm back, I'll marry you. You should also be careful when you're out on assignments in the future. Don't be too rash." "All right, I promise. We'll both stay alive until the next time we meet," Sylvia replied as she extended her little pinky out and forced herself to hold back the tears in her eyes. "All right," Jack said as he made a pinky promise to her. "I'll never leave you again when I return. I'll clean up the house, cook, and do the laundry for you for the rest of my life." "You better remember your words. I'll hunt you down to the end of the world and castrate you if I ever found out that you've let me down," Sylvia warned viciously. Jack chuckled when he heard this. Just then, Christian knocked on the car window from the outside. It was time. The couple then got out of the car. Jack repeatedly turned back to look and wave at Sylvia as she watched him enter the airport. When the tall and slender Jack passed through the security checks, he turned around again and mouthed to Sylvia. Although he was too far away, and she could not hear his voice, Sylvia knew that he was telling her that he would miss her. He would be gone for years, and they would not be able to contact, message, or see each other. Unable to restrain herself any further, Sylvia squatted down on the floor and bawled loudly. The people nearby looked at her, but nobody found her behavior odd, as the airport was a place where people would either send others off or pick others up. It was far too common to see people cry. After Sylvia cried for a very long time, she heard Aaron's voice from above her head. "Go and cry in the car if you want to. It's too embarrassing for a member of the Bennett family to cry in public," he said. "Are you even consoling her?" April chided him before speaking to Sylvia gently. "Sylvia, let's go home." I don't want to go home," Sylvia mumbled as she rubbed her face with the back of her hand and looked up at them with her bloodshot eyes. "Let's grab some drinks and get wasted." April was speechless. Aaron immediately turned her down. "No way! You know what you're like when you're drunk." "I know, but I want a drink right now," Sylvia yelled at him as she stood up. "Can't people from blissful families like you empathize with singles like me?" Aaron arched his eyebrows high when he heard her shout at him. "All right, it's just a round of drinks. Let's go," April replied quickly. "We'll get a room and drink to our heart's content." In the club at 11 p.m., they blasted Sandy Lamb's "I Heard That Love Had Returned" on the huge screen as Sylvia stood on top of the coffee table with a microphone in her hands, screaming along to the song. 10 years. Meanwhile, April stood on the other coffee table and sang to the tune of "So You Actually Don't Want Anything at All." Aaron sat alone in the corner. The corners of his mouth twitched as he watched the two women act on a drunken fit. He felt thankful to have tagged along, as he was sure that the both of them would be too drunk to know how to return home if he had left them to their own devices. He could understand why Sylvia was upset, but he could not wrap his head around why April would hug the microphone and cry as though her heart had just been broken. Aaron's temples twitched for quite some time. Eventually, he could not hold himself back anymore and yanked April off the coffee table. He then gritted his teeth and spoke into her ear. "You better make yourself clear. Who's the person who doesn't want anything at all?" April, who was already heavily drunk, blinked her eyes and looked at him for a long time. "What did you say?" she asked. Aaron roared and replied, "I'm asking who you're singing the song for." April cocked her head and dug her ear blankly, before saying, "Can you speak louder? I can't hear you." Aaron was speechless. His throat had become hoarse from yelling, and yet she said that she could not hear him. Feeling depressed, he lifted a glass of water and took a sip before letting go of April. "Carry on with your singing," he said. April then turned around and jumped back onto the coffee table to sing. Aaron sat alone for some time. As his head was aching from all the noise that they were making, he walked over to the door to have a moment of quietness. He then decided to find someone to bring him up, as he felt that he would not be able to deal with these two crazy women all by himself, no matter how capable he was. However, he was reluctant to allow others to touch the two women. After pondering about it for a long time, he eventually called Jeffrey. By the time Jeffrey arrived, it was already midnight. When he saw the disheveled state of the two women and how they were acting in a drunken fit, he frowned. He walked towards Aaron and asked coldly, "Did you do something to let April down?" "I did not," Aaron replied, incredulous. "Then why is she singing 'I'm Not the One You Want'? Can't you hear how sad she sounds when she's singing? She's even crying. Why would she cry if you didn't let her down?" Jeffrey asked, his black eyes incandescent with fury. Aaron silently cursed 1,000 times in his heart, and he felt that it might have been better if he had simply carried them back on his own. "Your sister even sang the song 'Break Up Happily' when she got drunk back then. She has the habit of singing breakup songs when she's drunk. You can ask her tomorrow morning if you don't believe me. If you seriously insist on pressing on with this, I too want to ask her who she's thinking of when she's drunk," Aaron explained. Jeffrey watched him silently for a moment, and when he realized that Aaron didn't seem like he was lying, he then turned around to grab hold of Sylvia.
So you want me to carry her? He asked. You can carry your sister. Sylvia just fell out of love. What if she falls for you? Aaron replied after some thought. Jeffrey was speechless. Jeffrey could ignore Aaron's narcissism, but Aaron made it sound as though all his family members were perfect. You're thinking too much. Winnie's much gentler and softer, and I like women like that. Girls who are too masculine aren't my type. Aaron chuckled and said, Fine. Next time, I'll tell Winnie that you like women who are gentle and soft. It's usually very easy for women to steal a man with such inclinations away from his lover. It's easy for a hypocritical prude to pretend to be gentle and soft after all. Hearing his words, Jeffrey was completely taken aback. Jeffrey's chest heaved in anger, and he wondered if Aaron was intentionally pitting against him tonight. I'll leave you to handle these two women on your own if you continue to harp on me like that, he warned. Aaron's lips curled into a smile, and he turned around to drag Sylvia off the coffee table. Jeffrey drove the car during their journey back home. All of a sudden, Sylvia began to hug April and cry in a drunken fit. Jack, I can't bear to let you go. I can't, she sobbed. April was stunned and shocked. You shouldn't act like that. I'm a married woman, April said as she trembled. Aaron sneered coldly, amazed that she could actually remember that she was married. Jeffrey took one glance at the back seat through the rear mirror of the car with a complicated look in his eyes. She had a breakup? He asked. Yes, Aaron replied calmly as he nodded his head. Ultimately, it was best for Jack's mission as an undercover to be known by as few people as possible. Sylvia would likely be subjected to the judgment of others for the subsequent period. Jeffrey was puzzled. How can that be? They seemed to hit it off so well previously. They even sent a message to announce that he had proposed to her. I thought that they'd be getting married at the end of the year. Aaron sighed softly and replied, It's hard to explain the matters of the heart. It's not impossible to break up at the door right when you're about to enter the wedding chapel. So you should also watch out in case Winnie suddenly ditches you. Unable to put up with him anymore, Jeffrey said, You're bent on pitting against me tonight, aren't you? You think too much, Aaron said calmly. I'm merely talking about a common and factual observation in present-day society. Jeffrey fell silent as he pondered about it. Forget it. He did not want to argue with Aaron anymore. After all, he was certain that he would get married this year, and if things failed to work out, he would directly kidnap Winnie home. Halfway through their journey, Aaron suddenly felt April's cell phone vibrate. When she tapped on it, he realized that it was a message from Jack, which read, Sister-in-law, could you help me remind Sylvia to take the birth control pills? I'm slightly worried that she won't eat it. Jeffrey could suddenly sense a chilling atmosphere in the car. He trembled before glancing at the man who was seated in the passenger's seat. Bastard! Aaron blurted out as he clenched his teeth and kept the cell phone. That punk simply had to devour Sylvia before he left. Did he think that he could do as he pleased because he was leaving to work undercover? Aaron had a good mind to give Jack a good thrashing when he returned 3 years later. Baffled, Jeffrey asked, Who are you referring to? Jack, Aaron answered. Jeffrey went silent. Every time a couple broke up, one party would certainly be the jerk, and it seemed like it was Jack in this case. Could you stop for a moment when we pass by the pharmacy later? I need to get some flu medicine. My throat doesn't feel very well, Aaron spoke in a cold, low voice. You don't sound like it. I think you look pretty well. You look like you're well enough to hunt a tiger in the mountains, Jeffrey teased. Aaron was speechless. He could not seem to engage his brother-in-law in a proper conversation at all. When Sylvia woke up the next morning, she opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling. She was exceptionally terrible after sobering up. The previous day, she was still rolling around in bed with Jack, and it felt like they would be so blissful for the rest of their lives. However, in the blink of an eye, she was all by herself now. Sylvia flipped over and thought that the bed felt huge and empty. It felt too lonesome. She dawdled until 10 a.m. before she went downstairs. April's hair was unkempt and she was having her breakfast, while little Apple was quietly seated and playing with his toy blocks. Sylvia, you're awake,
Here, have some breakfast, April said as she waved at Sylvia. I just woke up as well. My head hurts so bad. Sylvia sat down, but after she took 2 bites, she did not have the appetite to eat any more. After April ate for a while, she suddenly recalled what Aaron had instructed her to do this morning. She quickly whipped out a box of medicine from her pocket and passed it to Sylvia. Your brother wants you to eat this, she said. When Sylvia saw the name of the medicine written on the box, she began to cough furiously. At that moment, no matter how thick-skinned she was, she could no longer remain calm. Jack texted me last night to get me to remind you to take the pills, but I was drunk yesterday and your brother read it instead. So he bought this for you, April explained with a grin. She could guess what Sylvia was puzzled about. I genuinely had no idea about it. Sylvia lowered her head and lifted her bowl of porridge before gulping down one big mouthful of it. Half a minute later, her face felt less hot. She then looked up and said, If I don't savor a good taste of him, who knows if he'll hook up with some other woman behind my back for the subsequent 3 years. I'm his first girlfriend after all, so it's bound to leave a deep impression on him. This will also serve as some sort of control over him. So you've done it again, April said unreservedly. Although she heard Aaron rant about Jack early in the morning, she did not believe that Jack was the one who started it. You're right, I got him drunk, Sylvia said lazily. April felt like she had to take her hat off for Sylvia. She envied her as well. If a woman was to live her life like Sylvia, at least she would not have any regrets. But was it worth it? April asked. She felt that what Sylvia had done was too much, and she was speechless. At the same time, she felt like she had been very pretentious and artificial in the past. April then sighed and said, No matter what, this is for your own good. It's also an act of responsibility towards the child. It's not so easy to raise a kid. Besides, she felt like she had something else to say, but she stopped herself at the last second. However, Sylvia completed her sentence for her and said, Besides, he may not necessarily make it back alive. I'm sorry, Sylvia, April said apologetically. She also wished dearly for Jack to return home alive. However, working undercover was an extremely dangerous matter to begin with. I get it, don't worry. I don't intend to get pregnant. I must also try my best since he's fighting hard in the tiger's den. When the time comes, I hope that I can personally destroy the Tox organization and pick him up instead of fetching him from the airport with our child. That'll be too tacky, Sylvia said. She then took the birth control pills and swallowed them. April heaved a sigh of relief, thankful for the fact that Sylvia was quite different from the average girl. Sylvia left after breakfast. Although April asked her to stay over for some time, Sylvia turned her down with the reason that she had to get ready to head to work the next day. She only received news of Jack's disappearance in Italy after 4 days. However, this was a confidential case and the upper management had requested to withhold it from the public. Nonetheless, the news still spread internally within the police department. After Sylvia came to know of this, she hid at home again for a week until the director summoned her to the office. When he saw how much weight she had lost, he looked grave and sympathetic. Sylvia, seeing the state you're in, I'd advise you to use your annual leave. After all, the Bureau has already approved your 3 months' worth of medical leave previously, he said. I'm fine, Sylvia replied. She then clenched her fist tightly and her eyes began to redden. To get others to believe her, she had to appear sufficiently grievous. I need to pull myself together soon. I have to put the mastermind behind bars. That's Interpol's role, the director said with a frown. You just have to do your job well. I'll have to terminate you temporarily if you insist on investigating the Tox organization. Based on your current abilities, that's not something that you can step into. Jack is a citizen of the United States of America. He's also our country's scientist. So the police will certainly locate him and account for his safety. Thanks, Director, Sylvia replied as tears inevitably flowed down her cheeks. The director let out a deep sigh before he said, Here, wipe your face with some tissue. Jack's parents have already gone over to Italy. Someone will pack up his things on his behalf. You should look ahead in life. Sylvia looked distracted when she came out of the office at the police station.
The colleagues who had brushed past her gave her looks of sympathy. Many of her friends had seen the news of Jack's proposal to her. Everyone thought she would be getting married this year, and yet such a thing had happened. After walking alone for some time, she suddenly saw a silhouette dart across her. Jeremy stood in front of her, and there was a look of concern in his jet-black eyes. "Sylvia, are you all right?" he asked. Sylvia looked up at him absent-mindedly before flashing him a wry smile and saying, "Who can remain all right when such a thing happens?" Jeremy frowned when he saw Sylvia's current state. He felt terrible and even regretted his decision back then. If he was more considerate towards her and more thoughtful towards their affairs, they might have been married with kids. She would have never met Jack and had her heart broken again. However, it was useless to dwell over what one could have done, because most of the time, it was hard to turn back. "Sylvia, I'm sure the police will find him," he consoled her. "They merely want to make use of him so they won't kill him." A puzzled look appeared in Sylvia's eyes. Jeremy then explained to her, "Previously, I was in charge of Tox's case when I was in Rosewood City, so I do have some understanding of it. If the police can't find Jack, I'll personally help you track him down after I join Interpol." Sylvia was stunned. "Interpol?" she asked. "Yes. Based on my last performance and my decent management of the Tox case, they extended an olive branch to me," Jeremy continued. "But I still have to train for some time. I was initially hesitant because my original plan was to stay in the city and work my way up. But Jack's case made me rethink my plans." Sylvia was speechless.
Sylvia was confused for a moment before she stuttered and asked, "Hey, could you take me with you as well? I also want to search personally." After a moment of hesitation, Jeremy gave her an honest reply. "Sylvia, you need to be meticulous and good at fighting. You also need to have a record of outstanding performance and to have cracked big cases before. However, you don't have any of these. Besides, I'm not the leader of Interpol, so how can I take you with me? You have to make it in through your own abilities." Sylvia instantly felt a great sense of defeat. She felt that people like Jeremy entered the police force solely to hit her down. People like him could easily enter Interpol without much effort. In contrast, she had to work herself to the bone when she decided to enter Interpol back then. "Sylvia, don't let your imagination run wild. Everyone desperately wants to save Jack. You can't rescue him by simply joining Interpol. Nobody can guarantee that we can save him. I'll try my best to help you. Although you're not my girlfriend anymore, you're still a friend to me," Jeremy said with a wry smile. They could not be a couple. He could at least be a good friend who would watch over her like he used to do when they were kids. Sylvia was stunned for a moment, and she felt slightly touched. "Thank you," she said. Subsequently, Sylvia would flip through cases in the office every day. Although she wanted to participate in actual operations, her leg had yet to recover fully. However, gossip began to spread like wildfire in the police station. It seemed like there would be gossip about women everywhere, especially where people gathered. That day, there was a meeting at the police station. Sylvia and Lenny arrived early, and upon arrival, they could hear some female colleagues from the supervision department whisper in hushed tones ahead of them. "Have you seen Sylvia lately? Man, I'm not sure if it's because her boyfriend's gone missing, but she looks much uglier now." Sylvia was speechless. What the fuck were these people talking about? It was true that recently she did not bother to dress up because she was feeling down. She wore the police uniform all the time, which did appear to be slightly sloppy and slovenly. However, people like her, who were naturally endowed with good looks, would still stand out in the crowd even if they were occasionally sloppy with their dress. Lenny heard the gossip as well and frowned. Just when she was about to give them a good scolding, Sylvia stopped her at the last second. She wanted to hear more of what they had to say. The female colleagues obviously did not notice that they were behind them as they continued with their lively discussion. After all, Sylvia came from a well-off family, and she had even managed to find a handsome boyfriend like Jack, who was the cream of the crop. Thus, people were quite jealous of her in the past. This was human nature. We would inevitably gloat when misfortune befell upon others who were previously better off than us. Oh, you mean her? Yes, she doesn't look as pretty as before. After all, Sylvia isn't young anymore, said a female colleague. Yeah, she's already so old, and yet she's still unmarried. Now that she's dumped by her boyfriend, who knows when she'll be able to marry? So what if she comes from a rich family? She can't get married. Another colleague added, That's true. I guess it's also good to be average like us. But in my opinion, I feel that you can't be too picky even if you're rich. Jeremy's so handsome, and I heard that he dated Sylvia for 7 to 8 years. They had plans to get married, and they had even sent out their wedding invitations. But all of a sudden, she decided not to marry him. While Jeremy said that they broke up because he failed to cherish her, he was such a nice person. He's also handsome and capable, and he came from a decent family. I think she's the pretentious one, a colleague remarked. Yes, but do you guys think that maybe she's destined to remain single? Both her previous and current relationships ended like this. I heard that she jinxes her spouse. Another colleague said, No way, a colleague exclaimed. Why would Professor Kipling disappear out of the blue then? I heard that the situation looks grim for him, another colleague remarked. Sylvia and Lenny were speechless. These gossip mongers seriously have nothing better to do, Lenny bellowed. Unable to put up with them any longer, she charged over and slammed her palms down on the table. You're the jinx. We're all in the police force, and yet all of you can still be so superstitious. Why don't you go be a fortune teller instead? When the female colleagues saw Lenny and Sylvia, they jumped in fright and turned to flee. However, Sylvia grabbed hold of 2 of them and pressed them down on the chair. She then pointed at one of them and said, I know you. You came here last year. You liked Jeremy, but he never liked you. Because of that, you bore a grudge against me and would badmouth me when you have nothing better to do. I didn't hold it against you in the past since I was in a good mood. But now, a scientist who contributed to our country is missing. Instead of thinking about the case, you dished the dirt on his family and maliciously defamed them. Should I report you to upper management? The female colleague jumped in fright, but she then retorted indignantly, When did I defame Professor Kipling's family? Sylvia sneered coldly and slammed the table before replying with emphasis on every single word. I'm his fiancé, so I'm his family. Do you have a problem with that? The colleague was badly shaken by her aura, and she could only blink her eyes in terror. She had completely forgotten about the fact that a fiancé was not an immediate family member in the eyes of the law. Besides, you said that I'm ugly, Sylvia added with a chuckle. I still look better than you even if I'm ugly. No matter how gorgeous you're dressed, it's useless. I still look better than you even when I'm dirty and disheveled. Why do you bother to apply makeup at all? No matter how beautiful your makeup is, it can't conceal those flaws of yours, such as your puny eyes, your dull mouth, and your flat forehead. Sylvia, you're too much! Another woman, who was slightly older among the girls, shouted. Shut the hell up! So what if I marry at an older age? Everyone in the police station knows that your husband is a lazy bum. Everyone knows that he keeps a mistress outside, and you can only put up with the humiliation. What rights do you have to criticize others? Sylvia continued. The woman's face turned shockingly red, and she quickly turned around to leave. After she walked off for a few steps, she turned back and kicked her feet viciously on the table in front of everyone. All the girls instantly staggered backward in fright. Lastly, let me warn all of you. Don't ever let me hear you say that things don't look too good for my man. You better not mess with me. Right now, my fiance's missing and I feel terrible, so I'm not afraid to do crazy things. It's none of your business as to whether or not I'll end up as a spinster. Even if I'm rotting away alone for the rest of my life, it's my own business, Sylvia said. With that, she walked over to the corner with dignity and found a spot to settle down. Even though there were many people in the meeting room, nobody dared to make a sound. Everyone glanced at her furtively in fear. Even the older men did not dare to breathe out loud, out of fear it would draw out the ire of Sylvia, who had just lost her fiancé. Lenny sat down beside her and secretly gave her a thumbs up. Babe, you're tough. Sylvia took one glance at her without speaking. Lenny quickly patted her on the shoulder gently and said, Don't be angry anymore. Those gossip mongers are just jealous of you. Things didn't go well in their own lives, so they're unhappy. That's why they're very pleased when misfortune befalls upon others. I know. I'm feeling down lately, but I suddenly feel less oppressed after venting it out. Sylvia replied loudly. As expected, you need to find someone to be your punching bag when you're in a bad mood. The group of people seated in front of her were scared and speechless when they heard what she said. Subsequently, for a long time, nobody in the police station dared to mention Jack's name in Sylvia's presence. There was no news about Jack, and many people thought that it was likely that he had died. Probably because this came as a strong blow to Sylvia, she began to practice her marksmanship in the shooting range or practice with a punching bag whenever she was free. A fine, unmarried lady like her soon became quite tanned when summer only just began. On Zachary's birthday, Sylvia was invited over to his banquet, and when Esther saw the state that she was in, she was heartbroken. Sylvia, Jack is a good man. We all like him very much. But you have to be forward-looking. You're still young and you have a long life ahead. Don't wallow in self-pity over his disappearance, she said. Grandma, I'm not wallowing in self-pity, Sylvia replied softly as she stared at the ground. You are, Sylvia rebuked as she held on to Sylvia's hand. Look at you. You've trimmed off your hair and your skin's become as tan as wood. You've also lost weight and your hands are covered in thick calluses. They feel so rough now that they seem as if you've been chopping wood in the mountains every day. Sylvia's lips twitched, and April could not help but speak up. It's not as tan as wood. You're being too dramatic. Close enough, Esther said. It's only the start of the summer. Will she be tan as chocolate by the end of the summer then? I've been practicing my marksmanship and physical combat skills lately, so I'm less particular about my appearance as before, said Sylvia calmly. Sylvia, you're a distinguished descendant of our family, Zachary explained. Your mother wanted to raise you like a princess when she gave birth to you back then. It truly breaks our hearts to see you like this. Be a good girl and don't tire yourself out. You're still young. When you gradually age, you'll know that you'll be able to put certain things behind you. You'll still want to marry someone. I know, Sylvia said, and she felt her nose burn slightly. She then held up her fork and continued. Let's dig in. It's rare for me to have a day off that I can use to spend with you guys. I'm leaving if we continue to talk about this. Let her be, Grandma and Grandpa, Aaron consoled softly. Our family's filthy rich, and if she can't find a spouse in the end, we have enough money to support her willful ways for the rest of her life. Esther let out a long sigh. After the group came out from the banquet at 7 p.m., Sylvia was the first to leave in her car. April's heart went out to Sylvia as she watched her leave. I suddenly think that I'm pretty blessed when I see how Sylvia is, she said. Yeah, that's right. So shouldn't you be treating me a little better? Aaron touched her soft, silky hair. When have I ever not treated you well? April could not help but roll her eyes. Like how you would occasionally give me a massage? You were exceptionally good at it when you were looking after me back then. Your technique with little Aaron. April looked at him coldly.
Baby. Erin wrapped his arms around her waist. Think about the other people and compare your life to theirs. Am I wrong to say that?
April was silent. He was right, except for Winnie. She had not kept in touch with anyone else from their university. But she did have the most blissful life. I finally understand why Sylvia didn't manage to catch the bouquet on our wedding day. Perhaps she does have to marry late, and Winnie may even marry before she does. I hope Jack comes back earlier. And if not, I don't know how long Sylvia will take to get over him.
He'll be back.
Erin stroked her head.
Winnie caught the bouquet, and she may be getting married soon.
How do you know that? April looked at him suspiciously. Are you even close to her?
Erin didn't know what to say for a moment. He cleared his throat and said, It was just a guess.
Speaking of Winnie, we'll be meeting again for the summer exams. April rubbed her temples and continued. We're going to have exams again, and I haven't finished reading my books. I have to go back and read my book now. Although she had graduated and she was back in school very infrequently now, she was still studying for her master's degree. Winnie was studying as well, and the two of them would only stop when they obtained their doctorate degrees. Erin was stunned.
What's so difficult about the upcoming exams when you have a photographic memory?
You don't understand. Ever since I had a baby, I have to read some material twice before I can remember them. April was complaining. Erin was speechless. It was the first time he felt that his woman was slightly annoying. I wonder how Winnie's doing. She has to prepare for a tour and the exams all at the same time. April decided to give her a call on the way home. When the call connected, April could hear music playing in the background. Winnie, what are you doing? How are exam preparations coming along? I still have an essay I haven't written, Winnie said with frustration. Summer tour in Rosewood City is starting soon, and I'm just exhausted. Poor you. April could imagine how difficult it was to write a thesis. Remember to rest well and take breaks. Don't tire yourself out.
It'll be better once I finish my thesis.
Winnie still had to rehearse her choreography, so they did not chat for long. In the dance studio, she only finished at 8 p.m. After she got in the car, she quickly tried to study a little bit while eating her dinner. Impressed and in awe of her determination, Bob snapped a photo of her and posted a motivational quote on social media. Soon, her post went viral. Gone with the Wind said, "My goddess is so perfect." And she's still trying to improve herself in school. She's remarkable, and we must all work hard like her. Winnie is my gal. Why are you eating so late? Come on.
Bob remarked, You have so many fans now, but how can you still make it to the top 10 comments every time you update your status? He's seriously obsessed with you.
Winnie smiled and looked at the screen. Although Jeffrey did not admit to it, they both knew that this account belonged to him. Bob, will you stop distracting me? I need to finish revising this, and you always make it difficult to concentrate. Bob sighed.
If I want to be honest, you've already gotten your bachelor's degree. For someone in the entertainment industry, you already have great credentials. Are you sure you want to obtain a master's or a doctorate? It's so tiring. There are so many celebrities who get their degree through connections nowadays.
That's different. I want to earn my degree myself and with my abilities. I'll only be confident of my achievements that way. Winnie shook her head. I'm learning music anyway, and the things that the professors teach are very helpful. I've applied some of what I've learned. Aren't my new songs nice? Bob was at a loss for words, unable to rebuke her. After about 20 minutes, the car drove into a small neighborhood, and Winnie dived back into studying after taking a shower. After a while,